What I'd like to do is take a slightly different tack, and I'm trying to explore some of the opportunities that might exist for many of us in terms of technology that's emerging, that's already in play, and explore some of the opportunities there. So let's have a look. I'm wanting to look at cloud computing. Specifically, look at what some of the advantages are of cloud computing. Some examples of cloud computing solutions. Some risks, because every opportunity has embedded within it a series of risks, and to embark upon any course without really understanding what we're talking about is foolhardy. So let's look at some of them. So let's start with the big picture. Everyone, or all of us, probably come from an organisation where we've got PCs, things like this, these laptops, servers, a range of other devices, printers, etc. And there are cables running everywhere, and sometimes they're hidden and quite discreet, and sometimes they're not. But fundamentally, the traditional grid model of computing is something that we're very comfortable with. PCs, servers in-house, all requiring backup, all requiring virus protection, UPS, and a whole range of management. And very, very expensive to do disaster recovery and all the other management that's necessary. For example, you know, the cost of acquiring and updating virus protection software, very expensive if you do it properly. Not so much because you've got to pay some external agency many thousands of dollars a year, but you need to actually employ someone internally to maintain that, to manage it, to make sure it's updated. Same with UPS, same with your disaster recovery. There's no point having a disaster recovery plan that's actually in the bottom drawer, and then you pull it out once you have a disaster. You actually need to run through it on a regular basis, every 6 months or so, to make sure it's up to date. All these things are very expensive. That's their traditional model. Well, what's cloud computing? Look, it's a lot of things. We can have software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, a whole range of solutions. So there are a multitude of things that are covered by this umbrella of cloud computing. I'm going to talk about software as a service. So, what is software as a service, or what's cloud computing from a software as a service perspective? Well, there are data centers. Now, there are many data centers, but there are very few data centers that are really world-class and high-end market cloud services. You know, the clients that use cloud computing, they access the software over the internet, they have high-speed access, you know, even before NBN. They can have access to a whole range of in-house and mobile devices, because typically the beauty of the cloud solution is that it's instantly available both for a PC, a laptop, a tablet, a mobile phone in many cases. So, you know, if you don't mind, you can use these things to actually run your whole business. You don't need to have much more if you are completely cloud native. And that's an incredible agility and strength and flexibility that wouldn't have been the case only a few years ago. And you can eliminate, the big benefit here is you're eliminating a whole lot of infrastructure needs. And infrastructure needs is another way of saying cost. So let's look at the advantages. Deployment, efficiency, risk mitigation, financial benefit. Let's go through each of them individually and explore some of the benefits. So deployment, what do we need? Well, you're eliminating the cost of hardware upgrades. I mean, it's not unusual to have a situation where, say, a CRM system's introduced into an organisation as an in-house grid computing application. And, of course, that requires new servers. And sometimes requires new cards. And there's a flow-on effect that it might have in terms of the rest of the infrastructure within the organisation. So what started off as being maybe a $20,000, $30,000 license cost, plus a double that, call it $60,000 implementation, probably has another $20,000 to $30,000 potentially in terms of the infrastructure cost. So it becomes a very expensive process in a grid model. Cloud, well, you're talking about how much do I pay a month? How many users are accessing? It's a high speed of implementation. I've heard of situations where someone will buy a particular license for a cloud application one day, and overnight it's configured, put together, and they come to work the following morning at 9 o'clock and it's already there, operator, able to be operated. There are also, within that whole software as a service space, there are all sorts of myriad options in terms of hybrid models. We're all familiar with the outsourcing model, where effectively you give a lot of your process functions to someone else and they do it. The beauty of the cloud model is the fact that you can actually have part outsourced, part under your complete control. And that gives a lot of flexibility. It means that you can actually design and acquire the type of service that meets your business needs. You can access technology. The beauty of that is that it's instant. You're not having to wait for someone else to make it available to you, to get it configured, etc., over a lengthy period of time. And mobile and tablet ready. We've already touched on that. Let's look at some of the risk mitigation factors. You're enhancing your IT infrastructure because you're eliminating your need within the software as a service area. You're eliminating your need to do the backups, the virus protection, the redundancy, the power volatility, the whole disaster recovery. And the reason is that the data center that you're using and the software as a service provider you're using has all of that embedded in what they're offering. So literally just wiping that out is going to be a huge benefit to the organisation just in itself. There's a zero cost to access software upgrades. So typically, most software goes through a periodic annual upgrade of some shape or form, and there's typically a 15 to 20% charge of the capital cost to do that. Well, embedded in the software as a service fee is typically that cost. So you actually eliminate a whole cost structure that would otherwise be there. And it's easy access to training and expertise. Typically things like GoToMeeting or webinars or things of that nature. But what it means is that you're actually able to access that talent, that expertise. Financial benefits. Working capital. Typically, if you're going out under the grid model, you're spending 20, 30 grand buying something. That's a bit of a hit to the business for the month that you've had. With the software as a service model, you're not talking about that. You're talking about an ongoing cost every month that's much, much lower. So you reduce the hit that it has, or the impact it has on your working capital. There's a total lower cost of ownership in the whole thing, and in part because what you're doing is trading your capital expenditure for operating expenditure. And you've got lower maintenance costs. Now, what are the risks? Well, look, while what I have said is definitely true, you've got to look at it in a longer term horizon. You can't just look at it in terms of the annual operating costs. You've got to take a 3 to 5 year horizon to make sure you factor in all of the costs and the benefits associated with a cloud application. You've got to consider the conversion costs. Now, that's both considering the conversion costs of going into the cloud, but if it doesn't work for you, the conversion costs of coming out of the cloud afterwards. It's not suitable for high levels of customization. So if your business model is such that it requires a high level of customization and unique tailoring to your particular set of circumstances, if that can't be configured as distinct from redesigned, but configured by the software as a service provider, don't go for it. It's just going to end up being much more aggravation, much more costly, much more difficult in the process. And there are higher traffic networking costs, uploads and downloads and things like that, but really they're small fry.